I mean, an Alfonso Cuarón Clue movie.
Apparently, she had been the one to acquire the rights to the game to adapt it into something, and it was for free. So she's constantly taking them on and off to like, I'm making a point, and then, all right, I'm done.
Welcome back to another episode of Real Chums, where chatting about movies feels like hanging out with friends. I'm your host, Marcel, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Danny.
This week, we're discussing Clue, the movie. Directed by Jonathan Lynn, based on the classic board game. This film features an ensemble cast, including Tim Curry, Madeline Kahn, Christopher Lloyd, and Eileen Brennan. All of them delivering rapid-fire dialogue and unforgettable comedic moments.
We're also thrilled to have a special guest joining us today, Juan Alaya, host of the Actors with Issues podcast. Juan chose Clue as the movie that has shaped him the most, and we can't wait to dive into why this film left such an impact on him. But before we roll the intro, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode.
And don't forget to follow us on YouTube at Real Chums and other socials to join in on that conversation. With that being said, let's roll that intro.
All right, Juan, well, welcome. We're so excited to have you on the show. We connected online. I've been actually, ever since I found you, a big fan of your podcast, Actors with Issues.
Oh, thanks.
I just want to kind of turn it over to you. Feel free to introduce yourself. Where can our listeners find you? Give us a little bit of context of your background.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, that means a lot. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. I'm not used to being a guest on shows. I'm usually the one hosting, so this is always a fun change of pace. But yeah, I've been, the creator, host, producer, editor, sort of just doing everything. Definitely one-man team over here. But for my show, Actors with Issues, I describe it as a self-help podcast for actors by actors. So it's me interviewing actors who are, working on TV, film, Broadway, going over their career journeys and the lessons learned along the way, and just sort of providing some insight into the world of entertainment for our audience. Is a lot of young actors and artists who are trying to get to where the guests are one day. So definitely sort of lifting the veil of all the sort of glamour and whatnot that's often perceived that comes with being an actor, and just sort of getting really real with the stuff that they've dealt with and gone through, and how they've overcome it, and hopefully they'll help a young actor along the way. But yeah, we're on YouTube, so you can watch all of our episodes on our YouTube channel at Actors with Issues Podcast. Follow us on social at Actors with Issues, Facebook, Instagram. I forget what other platforms we're on. We're not on Twitter. I don't really like Twitter that much.
We don't like Twitter either, so you're not alone there.
It's a big group over there that doesn't like Twitter.
Yeah.
But I think we're on Threads. I can't keep track with all these things. I haven't even tried starting on Blue Sky. It's like I can't keep up with all the platforms that are out there. But we're out there. Just search Actors with Issues. Go to actorswithissues.com. We've got all of our episodes up there, and some articles, and a bunch of stuff. But yeah, I've been a journalist and entertainment journalist for about 7 or 8 years now.
Awesome.
Since a few years before COVID, and member of the Critics' Choice Association on the television side, which has been really fun. And just trying to get more involved on the film side of things, which is why I was very happy to come on here and chat with you guys about movies, because I don't get to talk about that kind of stuff very often. But yeah, I don't know if you guys realize, but Clue, this is like the 40th anniversary of the movie.
Yeah, we did.
Which is insane. So we're actually going to be talking about Clue on my other show, but I don't think that's like till the end of the year. I have sort of a spin-off podcast called Once Upon a Time at the Movies, where we talk about movies that are celebrating a big milestone. We did like 2 pilot episodes about a year and a half ago. We did Halloween for its 45th anniversary, and then classic romance movie called The Way We Were with Barbra Streisand. That celebrated its 50th anniversary that year. And those were really fun to do. Just in terms of scheduling, it's really hard to try and run 2 podcasts and work as a journalist full time and all of that. So, yeah. Anyway,
that's great.
That's my spiel.
And thank you for that. I listened to your episode with Michael Urie,
Yeah.
from
Love Michael.
Shrinking, and it's just great, like his path and how he has achieved what he has achieved, both from Ugly Betty, Shrinking, and I'm a huge, Danny knows this, I'm a huge sucker, and I just love Michael Shore as well. You had
Yeah.
him on a couple
Yeah,
months ago, and I was just like, I would love to just pick Michael Shore's brain for like 10 minutes, because
same.
to me, that man is absolutely perfect. Everything he touches is just gold.
Yeah.
So that's great. Listeners, if you haven't checked out Actors with Issues, go check it out. You can find it on YouTube, as Juan said, and it's a great show.
Yeah, it's awesome. No,
Thank
Juan,
you.
thanks for hopping on. And we're excited to talk about Clue. So, as always, as you guys know who are watching, we always start with the question of the day. Today, it might be a bit of a simple one, but as I was watching Clue, I realized dinner starts at 7:30. At what time does the first guest arrive? That's my question. What do you guys think?
7?
Probably, I would say like half hour
Right?
before.
Right?
I mean, in movie, it's probably like 7 minutes between
Right,
the first
right.
guest and them starting dinner. But yeah, I'd say 7 is pretty good. Who's the first guest to arrive? Is it Colonel Mustard? Right?
It
It's
is Colonel Mustard.
Colonel
Yeah,
Mustard.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I guess depending on how you look at it, right? But Colonel Mustard is the first guess, and I would say 7. But if like I was like, man, it's just so dark, and I know it's like it's East Coast,
It's New England.
it's New England, and if it's winter,
Yeah.
I'm like but I love it. I just thought I was like, man, what time are they starting? Because like when it cuts to Miss Scarlet in the road, it's like howling wolves sound design. So it's like 11:30. I'm like, wolves aren't out there. Anyways, I just know it's sound design. You're just going for there. I just think it's fun to think
Right.
about
You're trying to
the
add a bit to
actual
your
logistics.
I was on Reddit the other. Any story that starts with "I was on Reddit" is gonna be good. This one's not that
Like,
good.
oh boy, buckle up.
I was on
Yeah, buckle
Reddit,
up.
and under like the movie suggestion subreddit, someone said, "Hey, what's a movie that takes place within 24 hours?"
Yeah.
Right? And so you have people like commenting a bunch of stuff. And I had just watched Clue for the podcast, and I mentioned Clue. Pretty sure this takes place in like a period of like 6 hours. And then a bunch of people were like, "Oh yeah, I forgot about Clue. It does take place in like just a couple hours." But
Yeah.
anyways, yeah.
Well, I'm excited to hop in and discuss why this film is so influential for you. So, if you were the first time watching the show here on Chums, we often bring on guests and we ask them, as you watched in our pilot episode, we discussed movies that were influential for us. And this movie for you, Juan, is influential. So, share a little bit about why it's influential and what its impact for you has been.
I don't even recall why. So Clue was one of the first DVDs I ever bought growing up. It was, I'm pretty sure I got like a used copy at FYE. I don't know if you guys have those where you're from.
FYE,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Back when people were still buying physical media, sadly, that's all gone downhill, sadly. But yeah, and then just popped it in and watched it the first time, and like me and my sister were howling with laughter throughout this entire movie because you grow up watching. My parents are immigrants, so we grew up watching like the Three Stooges in Spanish, hilariously. And we loved slapstick humor. The Home Alone movies were iconic for us as well because it's like crashing and falling and silliness and all of that. And it just like it very much sort of shaped my sense of humor because I see myself a bit in like Wadsworth because in the first half of the movie he's this like super dry character, and I consider my sense of humor very, very dry, which is why I also love Mike Schur comedies because it's you've got The Office, The Good Place, and all this. It's not super like silly humor. It's a bit on the drier side.
Yeah.
You have to like think about the joke for a second after it's happened, and that really much sort of shaped my sense of humor growing up. And again, just the slapstick of it all. It's just such a brilliantly balanced movie. I know we're gonna get into like the intricacies there, but just it being so suspenseful and like kind of creepy, and then there's just like people are running into each other and spilling things and all of that, and it really shaped my sense of humor growing up as a kid because of how balanced it was. It's like it's not just like a completely silly movie. It's not a completely dramatic movie. It's not
Yeah.
90 minutes of the Three Stooges just beating each other up. It's not, you know, it's very balanced when it comes to how it handles humor and all of that. And just such a brilliant cast. You know, speaking of Home Alone, Tim Curry, great role in Home Alone 2 as a hotel manager. And, you know, you see Christopher Lloyd, you know, in the Back to the Future movies, and the whole cast, you see them all over stage and screen. Sadly, how about like half the cast is no longer with us. But you know, they had such incredible careers following this movie that was considered a flop, which is insane to think about. That it was not a huge hit back in the day, but yeah, that just sort of really introduced me to comedy in a way when I was a kid. And was
I
really
love
cool.
that you mentioned that, because I think the first time I watched this, I think I was like 12 years old, and I haven't seen it since. This is like my first time revisiting it in over 22 years. And I remember the first time I watched it, I laughed. I had a great time with it. And this time, you pointed out like it's a perfect balance of like dry humor, of physical comedy, of smart humor too, right? And I think for me watching it this time around, I really appreciate more the writing, and I know that John Landis helped with it, but this is definitely Jonathan Lynn and Landis writing this. And Jonathan Lynn, I mean, we talk about the cast and the great success that they have, but Jonathan Lynn had a couple of stuff after there in the 80s, but in 1992 he goes on to do My Cousin Vinny, right? And just the humor, and obviously Marissa Tomei is incredible in that, but like the writing that goes in there and just the filmmaking of that movie is just, there's a lot of like learnings from here that gave him that success there and further on in other projects that he does. But I just really appreciate the balance in the writing this time around than I did the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the humor is very sort of like grown up. There's a lot of sort of like inappropriate humor you will not get as a kid, especially in the first half with the vet. Like, there's a lot of there's a lot of jokes in there that that you just don't really appreciate as a kid. And when you watch it as adult, you're like, oh my god, this movie's a lot raunchier than I remember. You know?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's So I actually didn't watch this until I'm pretty sure I watched it in the first year of college, in like 2010, 2011. I just, for whatever reason, just never like made it in my home when I was growing up. But I had such a great time watching it. I'm a pretty, when it comes to comedy, I don't care. I just really like comedy movies. If it's raunchy or if it's like ridiculous or if it's kind of cheesy or whatever, I'm gonna have a good time. I have my preferred ones, but at the end of the day, like I just, I want a good laugh. I think we all need to laugh a little bit more. And I think that I was reminded, I think my biggest takeaway in here, revisiting this film, is the fact that we don't get movies as much like this anymore. Like super condensed, super like what's going to happen. I think we get more sophisticated, like, our Glass Onion, Knives Out. I think Knives Out, the Knives Out, now going to be soon a trilogy, has leaned into taking some notes from this film.
100%.
And I think that, and so I appreciate, Jonathan Lynn and the whole cast, because it's such a stacked cast, and them doing so many other things that we have this film, so that it does set some tone for people to say, oh, you know what, I want to do that, but I want to do it better, right? Or I want to improve on the things that I love about it. And so I'm just really excited. So I guess our next question, Juan, is like, we will have a segment where we like to talk about three things that we like, and three things that we maybe don't love, and as just a rapid fire kind of response. So you want to take it away?
Sure. Three things I like. Oh boy, where to begin? I think that just casting is just brilliant when it comes to like the best things, especially Tim Curry as a lead was just genius. Whoever I think that was like right on the tail end of like Rocky Horror and all that. He had really blown
Mm-hmm.
up as a star, and casting him was just genius because he's a man of the stage and does the physical comedy, and his energy is just like off the rails, and brilliant choice there with the casting. What else do I like? The score. I'm such a music nerd. I have so many like vinyl of like scores and soundtracks. I have like a Star Wars original print vinyl of like the original
Nice.
score, which is so cool. And yeah, I again equally balancing humor and suspense. It's such a creepy score and then really funny throughout the movie. And gosh, Madeline Kahn, I just have to single her out because I think Mrs. White is one of like the funniest understated characters in the movie, and she's also very clearly like a psycho. So I think that Madeline Kahn does such a great job of balancing that as well, of like, you know, trying to be this put together little lady, and then also like, oh, maybe she did behead her husband though, probably.
Yeah.
Dislikes, I would say, is it dislikes as well through things we didn't like?
Yeah. Or
two
things that
things.
you just don't think work well. Yeah, whatever.
This is a kind of a gripe of mine with movies from the 80s and 90s in general, is like sometimes the sound design, I can always tell when a line was dubbed over.
Yes.
Because the quality changes from shot to shot completely.
Yeah.
It's like they're yelling into a barrel and then they're like shouting down the hall. It's like that always bugs me when I hear that in movies, especially movies like that were backed by like a major studio or something. I'm just like, you guys couldn't clean that up a little bit better. I'm blanking what else I didn't like. I just love this movie so much that it's hard to think of like what I didn't really like. But yeah, you guys take it away.
Yeah.
I mean, I obviously love Tim Curry in this. I think he does a wonderful job with the physical comedy. We'll talk a little bit about that final act and him running around, and just like that really nails it for me as far as like his ability to just do comedy in general. I really like this time Mrs. Peacock, Eileen Brennan.
Yeah.
She's just, I mean, she's a comedic genius.
Yeah.
But like, there's especially like the dinner scene where she's just getting nervous and she just talks and talks, and she has these like twitches in her face, and she just keeps going and going, and it's just the delivery of the lines, her facial expressions, and then at the very end, like I felt like she went under the radar for me all these years in this movie up until now. This last time I was just like, she's solid, she's great. One of the things that I maybe didn't like, or kind of, I felt like, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but like I wanted more suspense in it. I think the movie does a great job at introducing the characters. We split them up, but never at any point do I feel like, could it be Professor Plum or could it be Miss Scarlet, right? And this is something maybe purposely done on the script to kind of flip the narrative on whodunits, but like on traditional whodunits, right? Like you're constantly doubting who could it be. Yes, we have motives on everyone, but like I'm never at any point I'm like, I think it could be this guy or it could be her or whatever. So I think I kind of wanted a little bit more suspense in there. I still wish that they would, and this might be a hot take, but I kind of still wish they would do the movie with one ending, and then like with the real ending, and then I don't know if it's like after the credits show the other two. I think at the very end it might get a little bit convoluted with here's this ending or here's this other ending, but no, here's really how it happened, right? And maybe I just need to process that a little bit more, but I think I would like more of like a cohesive narrative, and then you give me these little Easter eggs of endings. I don't know, but that's one thing that I'm still kind of processing on my side.
Any comments?
Well, just about that, it's interesting because I remember with the DVD, and it's similar to how it happened in theaters. So I'm sure you guys know when it was released in theaters, different screenings got different endings. With the DVD, I remember that when you play the movie, it asks you, do you want a random ending or all three? Which is really interesting because you could kind of just pick one and then you could, go back to the menu later and watch the rest of them. But it's funny. wish that they had done an ending with each character, but again, that they sort of cycled that. But of course, in theaters, it would have been like, no one's going to go watch this movie 9 times,
Right.
in the 80s, to see all the different endings. But I almost wish that they had like maybe filmed them, and of course, DVDs and whatnot didn't exist back then, so it would kind of just like sit on the cutting room floor.
On the cutting.
Yeah. But yeah, I totally get what you mean with someone who just wants kind of like a straight story. It's like, wait, which is the ending though? But it's of course a funny nod to the game, which my sister loves. I don't love the game as much. It's funny because I'm not very good at it. But she loves the board game, and it's always funny sort of seeing the different combinations and whatnot throughout the thing. But yeah.
Right. Danny, how about you?
For me, the things that I was driving this round is I love the quick setups and payoffs on things, on punchlines, right? I love that there's not only the physical comedy, but they have these moments where they set up a line, a physical thing happens, and they helped carry little moments throughout the way. For me, I loved the physicality and the blocking of the film. I think that this movie is a wonderful film to recognize that like it's filmed in one location essentially, and they're leveraging each room in that location in a very wonderful way, with blocking and how the camera and the characters, how camera movement is motivated by characters and to help add to scenes. And I think that that's something that that comes from theater, and I think that's we use that even more aggressively now. But it reminded me of Wolves. If you haven't seen Wolves on Apple TV, that also has a really great motivated camera movement with blocking that isn't as quite as like theater-esque as this. But I think that that's something special to have. And then also, I love me a good raunchy movie, and I haven't seen one in a while. And I think that the raunchy comedy in here, especially as a grown adult, it just is like hits harder, and I'm here for it. Maybe some days I'm like, nah, it's maybe not the best, but today or this watch, it was great. Some things I'm not that I'm like maybe some like small gripes, just the some of the moments maybe not being with Keaton, what's his name, Mr. Green, being gay, and people like commenting that that just doesn't age well. But I think the only other thing that I really have gripes with is sometimes I wish I had a little bit more score. I do love the score, but I wish there's a couple moments that just help, maybe like you said, help to add to the suspense or to to help motivate the mystery of, oh, is it this, or is it or could it be someone else? Maybe small motifs for individual characters or something that could have really emphasized something more. I just think that would have been really awesome to have.
No, that makes sense. I kind of want to jump a little bit into like the themes and the structure of the movie. Obviously, it's a good mix of mystery and humor and the approach of adapting a board game into an actual storyline is obviously a challenge in and of itself. But I want to talk a little bit how the movie blends both genres successfully. What works for you? How does it blend those genres of mystery, of comedy? And I might be like hopping a little bit back into like Knives Out. You brought up Knives Out, right? Which, similar to this, has a large ensemble cast. You have motives, you have suspects. Knives Out handles the comedy a little bit not as slapstick or as physical as here, right? But you have the same elements there. What works and what doesn't work in balancing the mystery and the humor for you guys?
Do you want to take it away, Juan? You want me to start?
You go ahead and start.
So for me, I think some of the, I think that it's the playoff of the physical nature of each character playing off of one another that comes to play for me. I think Peacock, we got Eileen Brennan, who, like you said, is a master in her craft, that she just slays. And not only that, but like because she's Mrs. Peacock, the peacock nature of her outfit, it's kind of outlandish out there. It just, they hit hard. But also the inter moments between each of the characters. The play, I love that Mr. Green and his glasses, his mannerisms with his glasses, and each one of those, I just think helped to add to both the comedy and the mystery, right? Mrs. White being so Wednesday per se, and her like, is Wednesday just Mrs. White? The character of Mrs. White, just like, oh, morbid. How morbid is Miss White? Anyways, I just think that that to me is what stands out to help blending the genres.
Okay. How about you,
I
Juan?
think that there's a ton of very clear character work that they're doing, and with a lot of them, they make use, like you said, of Mr. Green with the glasses and Mrs. Peacock with her glasses too. She's constantly taking them on and off to like, I'm making a point, and then all right, I'm done. Like, and even like the feather hat she has, she's constantly fiddling with that. She's so fidgety, like you guys said. She's like always very nervous, and there's definitely a lot of character work that they sort of did. And I think Tim Curry said in an interview not so long ago that they rehearsed the film before filming for like a week or two. So they got to like actually work together as a group versus like, okay, we're going to start filming. This is the first time you guys are talking to each other, which is often the case with a lot of, film and TV. But it's cool that they sort of treated it a bit like theater because it was going to be such a big, lots of wide shots with the whole group and all of that. You kind of have to rehearse all that, especially with that giant set, this massive mansion that they built on a soundstage.
Yeah.
You'd think it was a real building, but it's just this giant set, which is crazy. But I think that something else that really helps balance the two is sort of the progression of the comedy. It starts with really silly, a bit childish jokes like, oh, he stepped in the dog poop and everyone smells it and they're wondering if they stepped in it. And the cheap shots at Yvette, like because of her low cut shirt and everyone's like staring or whatever. And then it turns a bit sillier. And by the end of it, you've got Tim Curry running up and down the hall and pretending to, falling out of the closets and all of that. And I just love how it evolves. It starts very much as sort of like a suspenseful blackmail thriller with a few jokes thrown in. And then once that part's done and we know everybody, it's like, okay, now we're off to the races with the silliness of it all. I also feel like some of the jokes in the beginning, I feel like there was a studio executive reading the script and was like, where are the jokes? You have to make this a little funnier in the beginning. So they added the dog poop stuff and all of that. And because it feels a bit like, why is this first 20 minutes of this movie so serious? They're like, well, I'm not laughing reading this.
Sure.
So I feel like they maybe added in a bit of those. They're like, okay, what can we add that's not adding more dialogue that we didn't rehearse or anything? But yeah, just the evolution of how much of a comedy it goes into throughout the movie. Yeah,
I love that because as a traditional whodunit, right? You introduce your characters. You slowly, whether it's the detective or someone else as kind of the narrative point, kind of helps pry out what motives could be. You learn a little bit about their background, and it's very much this suspension throughout the whole movie. Whereas here, we're learning about people, and we not only are we learning about people life, but why they got dragged into here, what motivations could they have, but you're interjecting comedy throughout it, which helps balance that approach. But I mean, at the end of the day, this is based on a board game. Like, this was never meant to be a serious whodunit, right? Or as a way that I approach the game, where I'm constantly like, who can it be? I don't know if you guys have ever done like a murder mystery dinner or murder mystery party. My wife took me one for Valentine's Day like 10 years ago, and like we sat there, we're given a card, right? And actors come out, they do the whole thing, and lights turn off and someone dies, and then lights come back on, the body's on the floor, and now we're like, okay, who's it going to be? And there's this competition of it. But the movie kind of juggles that and balances it perfectly by saying, look, here's Tim Curry running around, and even when he's explaining what could have happened, there's a moment where he turns off the lights, right? And then he turns it back on, and then he's on the floor, and then he's just sitting there. The camera's just on him, and he quickly like stands up. Like we're figuring out like what really happened, and the conscious decision to say, Tim, just play this real, like just lay there and then just throw yourself up again. Like it's these moments that make it really fun for me and continue to like make this like a classic to this day, right? I just love that perfect balance.
So I kind of want to talk about the fact that this is based off a board game. Like, why make a film for Clue?
I have a couple thoughts. So I mean, like, this is 1985, right? Like, board games are the thing, right? Yeah. Dungeons and Dragons has taken over the country. There's this opportunity for you to like create your own story or choose your own journey, so to speak. The movie kind of even dips into that by like choosing a different ending. I think it's just from a financial perspective, I see this. I'm like, yeah, of course, let's do this. This is a nationwide loved game. Everyone loves Agatha Christie or whodunit stuff. Let's leverage that and make this into a fun movie.
Yeah. Han, any thoughts?
There's actually this documentary on Clue, because I was curious when we decided we were going to talk about Clue. I was like, what else can I watch besides the movie that delves into the movie and all of that? And there's this YouTube documentary that this guy made, probably started making it about 10 years ago, because a lot of the cast who are still alive, they look a bit younger than they are now. But he interviews like the director, Jonathan Lynn, who was still around, and some of the producers and some of the cast that's still around. And something they said is that Deborah Hill, who was the producer of the film, she also was John Carpenter's girlfriend and was the producer on the original Halloween. She ended up becoming this huge producer at Paramount. And apparently she had been the one to acquire the rights to the game to adapt it into something. And it was for free. So that's why they were able to keep the budget so low. I think that the game board company said like, oh, we'll just take a split of the profits, which jokes on them. There were no profits because the movie didn't do well. So that ended up not they probably regretted that decision, but yeah, it's just interesting how back then companies were able to were willing to just take profits and not charge up front, because now you want to use a logo and they're going to charge you millions of dollars or say that they want free endorsements or something. But yeah, I think that it was just sort of a classic game that was beloved back then and still is around now. I feel like it's a lot like Monopoly in the sense that there are new editions released constantly. Like there's like a Simpsons version of Clue and a RuPaul's Drag Race version of Monopoly and all of this other stuff. Like they're constantly making new versions for people who love game nights. I feel like during COVID, people like kept their sort of social circle small and were like, oh, let's do a game night with just 6 people or something. And yeah, I just think that, you know, from back then, it makes sense that the commercialism of the 80s and all of that and was definitely played a huge part in it.
I think I don't. I mean, I was like, it's probably a way to sell more board games, right? Like, why not?
Yep.
The fact that it bombs, you know, on screen has me. The reason why I asked the question is because like Monopoly is on the docket to be produced.
To be produced, that movie, yeah.
Right. And that one that can go all over the place. And Margot Robbie, if I remember, is slated to be
like a producer,
right? So I just think like we haven't really had. I'm trying to think. Is there any other board games that have been made into a movie? I guess
Battleship was pretty terrible.
Oh yeah, Battleship. We don't talk about Battleship.
Sorry,
I forgot about that movie. Oh, such a bomb.
Does Ouija count? There's a couple Ouija movies out there.
Oh, that's true. That's true. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, Ouija though, like, I mean, it's a board game, but like, there's like that weird.
That's supposed to be a game.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. Yeah. So and you have a better purpose, but I'm thinking like with this movie. I mean, we always talk about like video game adaptations, right? And how a lot of studios are always after trying to make that adaptation that hits and resonates with the fans. I think Sonic is probably some of the most successful in this genre. Yeah. And the fact that like this is the thing, because they know like if you make this story, the fan base coming in, such a benefit for the studios. It's benefit for the actors. If it kills it, then you're known, or you are the Clue people, and like help make that connection, right? But board games, it being more unique in like how do you go? And I think that what I love is that they pay tribute to the board game, but they don't make it like there's a level of like it's almost, I would almost say if I was going to choose between playing the board game of Clue and watching the movie, I'm going to choose watching the movie almost every single time. I don't love playing the board game of Clue. Not to say that it's not fun. It's just that like every single time I'm like halfway through someone's, especially if you're not playing with kids or like, semi-older kids, you already know who it is. Like three guesses in or whatever, you're like, oh, it's the colonel with the candlestick in the library, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, that's just, I don't know.
It's been up in the air. Ryan Reynolds was attached to a remake of Clue.
I'm so happy that hasn't happened yet.
With Jason Bateman, I think, right? Well, I'm glad that you say that, Juan, because what makes this movie really iconic and continues to be a crowd favorite is just I think like obviously Tim Curry, that sincerity and that slapstick physical body from everyone, right? When we've talked about the balance of humor and suspense and mystery, but a Ryan Reynolds and Jason Bateman Clue-led movie does not excite me. Like I don't know.
Me either.
And not because I have any beef with Ryan Reynolds, but it's just like, how are you gonna Ryan Reynolds this?
No, he would Ryan Reynolds it.
That's what gets me about it, is that it's like his sense of humor does not match, or not his sense of humor, his like comedic sensibility, I guess, just doesn't match the tone of this era. And I love that even though the movie came out in the 80s, it doesn't take place in the 80s. It takes place decades before. Yeah. I feel like it only if there's a cell phone available, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
If someone can call the cops and then they're in 5 minutes, it doesn't work anymore. So I feel like if they do remake it, it has to be a period piece. Yeah. It can't take place in modern day, because most of these, you can't. Not every horror movie can be like, the reception's out. It's like, is it? Like, and yeah, I love Jason Bateman. I think he would be a great Wadsworth, to be honest, because he is a very sort of pared down, drier sense of humor that can match it. I feel like Ryan Reynolds is just too like sassy and sarcastic to be a buttoned up Wadsworth,
Yeah.
I feel like you need someone who not only has been in film but has been on theater, like has done theater work.
Right.
It's just like I said, like I think at the end of the day, if you're gonna be in one location, it needs to be, you have to. It's a theater production on film, and I think that's the thing that like, what I think really just want to come back to that, like it sells this movie is that aspect that like we are going to rehearse and we're going to do and not only that, but like how are we going to deliver the different endings and making sure that we are in tune with what's going to happen, or being able to like get feedback so that when they come in they're already ready to go, and it's not like what's the line again, feed that line to me, and then I'm good to go and go for the line, right? There's way more it's not just movie performance, it is full on performance, right? And I think that there are movies, I think we did Birdman last season on the show, and I think that one's also in that same vein, right? In the level of performance that they're doing is more in line with what you would go to see tickets in a theater for a play performance.
And that really just goes back to the essence of the game, right?
Yeah.
In the game, as players, you're taking these characters and you, as a player, are bringing them to life, right? So it already has intuitively that stage or theatrical element to it. And again, bringing in Tim Curry, who had such a success in theater, and helping him set the tone for the rest of the cast as a theater production. And like you mentioned, Juan, like these rehearsals as a cast before we start shooting, I think it brings the essence of the game, where I don't think Ryan Reynolds could pull it off. You know, I mean, an Alfonso Cuarón Clue movie.
Okay.
Birdman style. Heck yeah.
Okay, Juan, who would you have in your Clue?
Like, who's alive today?
Yeah.
Like, what actors would I cast today? Oh, God. Okay, well, first, I would have Edgar Wright direct it.
Oh, yes.
Man.
Edgar Wright. Yes. So, Clue is my favorite comedy of all time. Number 2 is Hot Fuzz, and then Shaun of the Dead. Like, come on. Yeah, it's just, I think he would do such a great job.
Yes,
the thing is, like, a lot of the actors who I would cast is, like, I feel like Wadsworth has to be a bit on the younger side. Tim Curry was probably the youngest in this cast, except for maybe Miss Scarlett. She seemed to probably be the youngest, but everyone else was, like, 45 and up, you know? See, I would say, like, I feel, oh my God, I don't know.
That's a hard question.
Simon Pegg would be kind of funny as Wadsworth, I guess, because he does the physical comedy pretty well. Especially thinking of Hot Fuzz, he does like stunts and action and all of that, and then also does like the very sort of, in Hot Fuzz especially, he plays like a very sort of buttoned up, straight arrow kind of guy. But I
was trying to think if the
hard
Sweeney,
question.
Sydney Sweeney as Yvette. She'd want to be too. She'd probably want to go to Miss Scarlet.
She'd probably want to be Miss Scarlet, to be honest.
Yeah,
I think she'd be a pretty good Miss Scarlet, but she's too young. I feel like she's a bit young for that.
And she's great with comedy, so I think she would pull that off really well. Actually.
Chris Evans as Mr. Green.
Okay.
Oh, that'd be funny because I feel like Chris Evans is pretty underrated as an actor.
I think Chris Evans is 100% underrated as a comedy performer.
Yeah,
like I think he is
Scott Pilgrim.
He got ghosted recently, or in Ghosted with
Another
Armas.
I mean, if we're gonna go with Edgar Wright and I mean, let's pull in Nick Frost as Colonel.
I was gonna say Colonel Mustard is exactly what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Nick Frost would be great in that.
Right?
I feel like just get Edgar Wright to bring in his usual dudes. Martin Freeman as Professor Plum. I don't know.
Yeah.
That'd be great. Oh man, this movie is it's gonna blow its.
Come on,
budget,
Hollywood, do your thing.
Great.
Just give us a
blow its budget. That's so good. I will say this.
Yeah, go.
I just want to re-emphasize that, like, I think that, like, the other movie TV show that I thought of as I was watching this is actually After Party. It's another TV production or Apple TV. If you've not watched After Party, I think it's not the best at it. Like, there's some amazing TV shows and movies that are happening on Apple TV Plus, and I think that people are missing out. They're like, it's like, whatever. I don't want to add another subscription, I totally understand. But if you get a new device, you get a year long's worth of Apple TV Plus. Yeah. But After Party is slightly underrated, and their approach to the whodunit is that the police officer is interviewing characters, and each one is giving their own perspective in its own style. And I think that although Clue provides is like one setting, it's the like slapstick, whatever. After Party still has comedy beats, but it's in the genres that it's kind of going for. And you don't ever, each episode, you're kind of like, what are you going to get? And it's a good time. Is it the best? No, but I do think it's a good time. And I think it reminds me, like, watching this just reminds me how much, like, this is just another version of what I think. I mean, there's been whodunits, but like that slapstick style, I want to have a whodunit with a little bit of comedy. spice. After Party is one that I would say, like, if you love Clue, check out After Party, because that's a great one to watch. And you have a wide cast, which each one kind of playing into one. But what I think it does better than Clue is you have a nice little narrative of like a love interest, and some play with not only the characters, but also with the police detective that is brought in. So I don't know, just a quick little thought. Did you watch After Party, Juan?
I watched the first season when it first came out. It's been a couple years. I haven't rewatched it since. But I think Tiffany Haddish is just she's so freaking funny, and as like the lead detective. And Dave Franco, also another pretty underrated comedy actor. I don't get why he's not in more stuff.
I agree. I actually, yeah, he's. I mean, he's a Franco brother, but like, he's got his own thing, and I really enjoy it. Like, he's got. Honestly, he actually would be. He he could even play Mr. Green. Honestly, just like, or just because I think that he's got mannerisms for it. Like he does physical performance pretty well.
The facial expression.
Yeah, facial expression alone for sure.
His like he emotes a lot of emotions through his face, so he'd be awesome. Let's talk iconic moments. What are some of your favorite moments? Like, if you have a favorite scene, what is it? For me, I really do like, and I kind of maybe gave it a little bit too much beef at the beginning, but like the 3 endings, I like the.
Oh no, he likes them.
Now he likes them.
No, like I like the performances. I think from a narrative perspective, I have issues with it, but I do like every time that Tim Curry, along with the rest of the cast, they just like commit to this. We're gonna move forward with this, like as if this is the ending, right? And it's also just like a wonderful technique in writing. I think I remember when I was a kid and I watched this, I was like, man, the writer has so much power and they can create anything. And it's one of those like early movies that I was just like, maybe I want to be a writer, or like I like you have the say, and maybe not always the case on
maybe not always the final breakdown, but you dictate the direction,
right? Early on. And I think I just love that you're able to do this in every single ending, have a somewhat, by its own, a clear motive, clear direction, and how you want to end it.
Yeah.
Right? And whether you do that 3 times, that's the power of a good writer, of being able to say, here's how I can have it go, here's how I can have it go, or here I can have it go this way. And flesh it out in a way that does, comprehensively make sense. And I just really like each individual ending on its own. Again, I think the movie would benefit from, like you said, Juan, like in a DVD version, choose one ending, and then you can choose to watch whichever one you want, rather than giving you all 3 at once. But I think that's fun. Also, my other, I already mentioned, was a dinner scene, just because of Mrs. Peacock. Like,
stole it, bro.
She just steals it for me. Like, everyone is just so quiet, and I feel the awkwardness, and she just nails it every time, just with her mannerisms, her hands going all over. What's his face? Says something along the lines. Professor Plum says something along the line of like, oh, you have like pressure talking syndrome or something like that. And you just have to talk, and she just keeps going. Like, it's so great. I love it.
Juan.
It's funny. 2 of my favorite drag queens are Trixie and Katya references Clue on their show constantly. And one of the lines, she did like the whole monologue. She did like the well, I may as well get the ball rolling as it's part of my husband's work, and I'm used to being a host. And the soup's delicious, isn't it? Like, it's just like you said, the whole bit with Professor Plum, especially bringing up like, does silence make you nervous? Because it seems like it does. You suffer from pressure of speech, and it's such a great introduction. It's such a smart way of introducing who people are, because she just exposed who she is, basically. Like, she says, I'm used to being a hostess when you're the wife of oh wait, we're not supposed to say who we are we? And then
Yeah.
they find out that Professor Plum is a shrink, and then everyone else reveals, oh, I live in Washington too. Oh, I know who you are. I've seen you before. It's such a smart way of sort of like she says, getting the ball rolling on moving the plot along, is her just word vomit and just revealing way too much way too quickly. But it's so funny, and the dinner scene is so funny in general. You know, with the soup slurping, and everyone just kind of like staring. And one of my favorite moments is when Wadsworth quotes some author or philosopher or something, and then it's such a subtle joke. It's one of those jokes that like blink and you miss it. But Colonel Mustard says, "I prefer Kipling, who's a writer." And his quote is, "The female species is much deadlier than the male."
Yeah.
And then he says, "You like Kipling, Miss Scarlet?" As she grabs like an appetizer off the tree, she says, "Sure, I'll eat anything."
No,
Yeah. I love
Like
that
that's
line.
not what he was talking about, but
Yeah.
just little. It's such a throwaway joke, but it's so funny
That's
when
a-
you catch it in that first time watching it. It's so funny.
That's again. I just want to reiterate. Like I think that the one line to one punchline hits are just they're killer.
And there's several,
Oh, throughout the whole movie.
which I feel like I don't want to bring back Ryan Reynolds, but like in a format like this, it wouldn't work with like a Ryan Reynolds. With this cast who have such perfect comedic timing, right? And play off of each other so well, it lands every single time. Even like well, I'm gonna expose myself. And he's like, well, no one wants to see that.
Please, there are ladies present.
They're ladies present.
Like it's the delivery, the timing, and kudos for like the rehearsal that the cast did together to be able to land that. It's just great.
To me, I just think that the biggest thing that they have is that they are there to do performances. Like and deliver no one's trying to steal the show.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I think in the era that we live, there's this level of like, how much do you give, or no this, or maybe like in contract, no, I want to make sure I have more, like I want to have the majority, like I don't know the full breakdowns. Sometimes I'm not, and it's to each their own, but the fact that each one is giving to the overall performance and the benefits of what we have is just, I think is fantastic. I think for me, the standout moments, I kind of like the middle of like them trying to discover what's some of the mystery. I think the fact that each new like companionship adds a new sense of nuance to each of the characters. When Wadsworth and Miss White are up there and they're like they don't want to leave each other's sight. That aspect, I think Miss Scarlet and Colonel Mustard discovering the hallways for the first time. I don't know. There's something about just the continual development that those sequences bring that I enjoy. And honestly, I think one of my favorite one-liners is the singing telegram. I forget about it every single time, and it's just
just the way she falls like a rag doll. It's like she gets shot and then just straight down. It's so funny.
No, straight down. It's just
not
like
even
it's
back. It's just she's standing and then.
Yep, great. I don't know. I love that.
Yeah,
it's fun. It's a good time.
Yeah, I was jotting down some of my favorite one-liners because I didn't want to forget them. But I think just the one-liners in general is just some of the best parts of the movie. But this one it's not even a one-liner. It's like 10 one-liners in a row with Colonel Mustard and Mrs. White in the kitchen. When he said like, if I was the killer, I would kill you next. And he's like, look, there's only one admitted murderer in here, and it's her. And she's like, I've admitted nothing. And he says, how many husbands have you had? Mine or other women's? Because back then, when it's like, oh, you had them means you slept with them or whatever,
Yeah.
And then she says, 5. Men should be like Kleenex, soft, strong, and disposable.
And he like walks himself into the next line, right? Which, oh man, I'm trying to think. I
think it's the same one I wrote down too. You lure men.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
You lure men to, what is it I wrote? You lure men to their deaths like a spider with flies. Flies are where men are most vulnerable.
Most vulnerable.
That's
Most vulnerable.
That's right. I love Mr. I think Colonel Mustard I love the fact that he walks himself into so many jokes.
Yeah.
There's the other line when Wadsworth calls out Mrs. White, right? And she says, "Yes, I did it. I killed Yvette. I hated her so much." And then she stutters and she goes, "The flames on the side of my face, right?" And then she continues like breathing heavy. Apparently,
and
like she forgot. Yeah. She forgot the lines.
Yeah,
and that was her like trying to remember how the line went, and it played off so well that they kept it. And I just like, again, true comedic actors and actresses that can continue and leverage even in a moment when they forget their lines. How do I just continue in this setting, in this tone, and make it funny? Right? It was just great.
And there was one more similar with Colonel Mustard. It was earlier in the movie when when Wadsworth is saying what each person did and why they're being blackmailed. He says, "I believe you just gave yourself away. Are you trying to make me look stupid in front of the other guests? You don't need any help from me, sir." That's right.
That's right.
Told you, freaking Colonel Mustard. Oh man.
Like you said, just definitely walking himself into each of these jokes is so funny. And then literally walking himself into a gag when he whips open the door and the ironing board just comes down and slaps him in the face. It's such a suspenseful moment because you expect it's suspenseful. Like you expect something to be there, and then he whips it up and just boom.
I can't handle another scare.
Right, the lamp.
Yeah, I don't know. I just that's great. Okay, I guess the last question I had was just like, which of the endings is your favorite?
I do like the real ending. I think it's just fun how everyone killed someone, right? Everyone has a motive, but like we flesh it out and we just see. I think more than anything, I like that it ties each character back to being like a suspect, and just Plum killed someone, Mrs. White killed someone else, et cetera, and then just Mr. Green, right? He was just kind of like this nobody, just kind of in the back, and he gets his final great moment, and it turns out that he was working as a plant.
Yeah, as a plant. I'm a plant.
Really? I thought you meant like you usually call the fruit.
And he rolls. Oh, so funny.
But I just like how each character ties into killing someone else, and then the final reveal. So I like the ending. I like the true ending.
Yeah. And just the plot twist that Mr. Green was actually straight, because he says, "Now I'm
yeah,
gonna go
right.
home and sleep with my wife."
The last one-liner, baby.
It just ends.
I think my favorite one, I think the one that works best is Miss Scarlet, like in terms of a narrative, because she was sort of involved with multiple people. Yvette worked for her, the cop was a client, and just sort of like she was knocking down multiple pegs. Some of the other, like, if they did do an individual ending for each character, I think Professor Plum would have been like the weakest, because he only was connected with the telegram girl who had one line. So it wouldn't be this huge reveal. Like, I don't see how they would have made it make sense for him to have killed everybody else. But I feel like Miss Scarlet was involved with more than one person, and that, from a narrative standpoint, it made the most sense for her to do it. But also each one of them being like, no, they were all just trying to tie up their like loose ends and get away with it. And like they said, stack the bodies in the basement and we all leave one at a time and forget this ever happened. Like that one made the most sense for that one. Because it's like everyone killed the one person who would have ratted them out, and then that's it. Just sort of move on and hope no one finds the bodies in this mansion.
I think that Miss Peacock. I just think that I think Miss Peacock's the reveal and her seriousness, her her motive and her disdain for being the laughing stock, like having to, she's, her politician husband having to be the one that has to take all the do all the dirty work so that he can stay clean. Then, but then like trying to axe out and the rest of the crew. I don't know. I think that the overall performance for Mrs. Peacock to me, I like that payoff.
Yeah.
Especially with such endearment that we have at the beginning. We kind of lose it as we start to think maybe it's somebody, maybe, like, well, what's going to happen? And then having the reveal, or that reveal, I think is pretty fun.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
this is a great
with
movie.
hers. I think that the final line for hers was also really funny. Wadsworth says, "We always get our man. Mrs. Peacock was a man." Oh God, Mr. Green. It's funny because we only find out that Mr. Green was a cop in the last one, and the other two, he kind of remains this like buffoon. Yes. So he always has those like funny lines, like "I told you I didn't do it," like it's so funny. But yeah, I think Eileen Brennan does such a good job at the end there, like just with her confession and everything, being like, "Great idea, I'll leave first." And then they start singing to her. That always confused me.
He's a jolly, like, I want to know if that's his song.
Yeah, that's right.
So as she leaves, and then she leaves, and they're like, okay, she's gone.
So good. I enjoyed it.
Juan, thank you for picking this movie. Like I said, it's been like 20 plus years for me personally since I last watched it, and I remember the first time again when I watched it, I was like, yeah, I get it. This is fun. I think this time around, I appreciate it more with the performances, the writing, and then you talked about the blocking and the use of the camera. So I think it's very obvious why this continues to be a cult classic. And whether it didn't succeed in the box office, but like how it gained that traction over the decades, and new generations and new audiences continue to like bump into this and be like, oh, this is actually really good. It's just a testament of what having a good writer, good direction, and a cast that is fully committed can do to a movie decades later.
I just want to reemphasize the fact that like sometimes like for filmmakers, right? If Juan, you're like, I want to get into film more, like I too, like I'm producing content for companies and corporate work and for YouTube, but at the end of the day, we all want to tell stories. And I think this movie, what it reminds me of is that sometimes we have to take a big shot in the dark. They took a chance on trying to do multiple endings or doing multiple endings for a film, right? And and saying, let's shoot for this. Let's see how it happens. It bombs in theaters, but like you said, Marcel, like as people start to watch it, it comes this nostalgic film that might be one of the first films as some individual, in our generation. I feel like that when I watched it, was a friend of mine. It was one of her and her family's like favorite like comedy movies to watch, and it was like one of the ones that like as she got older, it was one of the first ones she could watch, right? And so like there's this like nostalgia level that is incorporated with in that aspect, but also in the fact that like no, let's like. You liked Knives Out. Let me show you a quirkier version of what this could have, what Knives Out could have, was brought by because we had this film, right? That might have, inspired the whatever writers and whatnot. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just saying, I think that there's something to be learned in the taking a shot at something that's different and being committed to doing a great job at bringing it to life. I think that the fact that like the budget was small, the cast is really great, and with that, it's a testament to like we don't see those things happening at all, hardly anymore. And if they are, I think we recently did Rebel Ridge, and I think that like that's another one that like isn't taking as big of a shot, but it's like let's try something different in what we're going to do with the story, right? And with a small budget and with a crew that we can do. And I think that's lacking in Hollywood overall. And I think this is just a great testament of that.
especially in comedy, right?
Oh, especially in comedy.
Thank you again so much for joining us and recommending this movie. This is fun. This was a blast. I hope you come back and dissect another movie with us. But before we go, where can our listeners find you again? Just another recap.
Yeah, so you can follow my Instagram. It's at Juan Ayala Official. You can follow us on Actors with Issues on Instagram as well. You can check out Actors with Issues on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And yeah, we've got some exciting guests coming up from TV, from Broadway. Some folks from I don't know if you guys have watched the new comedy St. Denis Medical.
Yes, I am loving it.
Yeah, I'm loving it so much. We have some of the cast coming on for some one-on-ones, which is really cool. And a couple other shows that I don't know that I can talk about yet because the shows haven't come out yet. So
nice.
Netflix, I feel like, has a red laser on my forehead at all times. They're like, NDAs, you can't talk until we say you can talk. Well, yeah, all of our shows are up there, and we'll be coming back with Once Upon a Time at the Movies very soon. We've got some fun movies with anniversaries this year. I think Scream 3 is one of them coming up, or actually just turned 25 a few days ago, but we'll be doing the episode later this month. And some other classics and cult classics as well, like Clueless is another one we're doing, and then Clue later on in the year, and lots of other ones. But yeah, just keep an eye out, actorswithissues.com. You can find everything there.
Go check him out. It's a great podcast. I have a great time.
It's fantastic.
It's really good. Thank you, Juan.
Thank you, guys.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. As always, we hope you enjoyed today's episode as we discuss Clue. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And if you love this episode, be sure to leave us a review or smash that subscribe button on YouTube.
More importantly, what did you think of Clue? Which ending do you prefer? Follow us on any of our socials at Real Chums to join the conversation, or feel free to email us at your@realchums.com. You can find me on, where am I? I'm on Threads and Instagram at Marstrosity, MARZTROSITY.
Find me, Danny, at Rubio.tv. Juan at Actors with Issues, like he said. Join us next week as we discuss
Air Force One with Harrison Ford as he comes back into another role as a president with Brave New World coming out next weekend.
So check it out, and we'll see you guys in the next one.